Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a really fascinating shortcut. Not through complex philosophy this time, but through sacred geometry to understand the subtle body.
That's right. And the mission today is to look at your inner world as a kind of micro-render.
A micro-render, I like that.
Wow.
So like a perfect scaled-down blueprint of the entire universe.
Exactly. What the sources call the Virat Rupa. And if we want to understand that blueprint, we have to find the point where the rendering, actually starts.
Okay, the origin point.
And that critical nexus is the Hridaya Guhya, the secret heart. You can think of this as the ultimate energetic fulcrum or the 0 point.
That's a precise spot.
A very precise spot. It's where your central pillar of light, the marrow axis, intersects the horizontal field. And that field is basically your entire sensory processing screen.
That intersection point is so crucial because that's where all the geometric stability comes from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our sources explain that the moment that vertical axis meets the horizontal field, you get this flower of life geometry emerging as a holographic reflection.
And the logic is beautiful and it's simple. If that central intersection is stable, which they term dosal, the reflection is perfect.
And you experience true sovereignty.
But if that 0 point is perturbed, if it's glitched or what they call kashaya,
then the whole reflection gets distorted.
The whole thing. And instead of reality, you perceive Maya, illusion. So this isn't academic at all. The fidelity of your entire experience hinges on the stability of this one central point.
Okay, so let's break down the structure that holds that 0 point stable. Let's start with the vertical axis, the z-axis. This is the pillar of integrity.
Right.
So vertically up, mapped to the east. This provides the absolute structure, the skeletal blueprint, the sushumna.
A bone or white drop. It's the static, unchanging law of your form.
And then vertically down the south direction.
Well, that governs the metabolic and grounding functions. It determines the refresh rate of your cells, and it ensures that awareness, that clarity, actually descends into your physical hardware.
The fluid or grace.
That's the one.
So now let's shift to the XY axis, the horizontal field. This determines your reach and engagement with the world.
Your vibrancy.
I find this mapping incredibly insightful. Horizontal out, so the west is the projective axis.
Yes, defined by the red drop heat. It's how your vital energy, your prana, radiates outward and creates your aura.
How you shape your influence.
And that has to be countered, of course. It has to be balanced by the horizontal in, which is the north, the receptive function.
This is your sensory filter.
Right. Your capacity to absorb all that environmental and informational input without being, depleted or overwhelmed. You have to be able to assimilate what you project.
So we have this perfect geometric matrix structure, grounding, projection, and reception. And here's where it gets really interesting, connecting these 4 quadrants to the traditional systems.
The Buddha families and the Mayas, the elemental wind.
Exactly. Yeah. It shows this isn't just a static map.
No, it's a dynamic system of energy flow. So vertical up, east is Akshobhya, the mirror-like wisdom.
And that's instantiated by
Pranavayu, the vitalizing wind that governs all intake.
And vertical down south maps perfectly to Ratnasambhava, the equanimity wisdom. That's tied to Samanavayu.
The balancing and digesting function, and make sure what you take in is properly integrated.
Then across the horizontal axis, projection out, the west.
Amitabha, discriminating wisdom, and that's governed by Udanavayu.
The upward expressive wind for speech and exertion.
Right. And finally, receptivity in north is Amoghasiddhi, the all-accomplishing wisdom, which is grounded by Apanavayu.
The downward rooting force for elimination and grounding.
Exactly.
What's truly fascinating here is that the observer at the core, the jiva we started with, is Vairocana, the synthesis of all 4. But this leads us right to the application. Our source material really focuses on the significance of the Maitreya figure in the Western pose.
Ah, yes. That posture is the key. It's the key to activating the 5th Vayu, Vyana Vayu.
The pervasive wind.
The pervasive wind that circulates and distributes energy throughout the entire subtle body. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it suggests Vyana Vayu also circulates through the collective field.
The social egregore.
Yes. So the goal isn't just a personal, meditative state.
Right. The Maitreya example shows that once you stabilize that 4-quadrant matrix, you use Vyana Vayu to circulate those 4 wisdoms out into the social field. You're actively creating a pervasive social state.
You're being the shift. You're not waiting for it.
So what does this all mean for you? Listening. The subtle body is the necessary bridge. It's what takes your personal consciousness, your jiva, and translates it into a function of that cosmic blueprint, the Virad Rupa.
And the Vayas are literally the energetic fans that keep your personal holographic projections stable and functional.
So by diligently balancing those 4 quadrants, structure, grounding, projection, and reception, you turn your subtle body into a Vajra relay for a higher order consciousness.
Which leaves us with a final thought. Considering this idea of pervasive circulation, how are the Vayas moving in your own immediate social field right now?
Are they stabilizing?
Yeah.
Or are they creating friction? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.
Welcome back. For today's deep dive, we're tackling a really fascinating concept, something the source material calls the Vajra relay. We're basically deconstructing the internal mechanics of human interaction, looking at how your own integrity, your marrow axis, processes these high voltage energies when you deal with the world.
Right, and let's just unpack that term for a second. The jiva is essentially you. Think of yourself as a piece of very specialized hardware.
Okay.
The Vajra relay is its peak operational state. It's what happens when your vertical axis is stable enough to receive a massive download from the logos, causal source, and then transmit it.
And transmit it horizontally into the social field.
Exactly, without losing that internal pressure.
So we're not just pipes, we're active step-down transformers. We take this infinite voltage from the logos
and convert it into usable current.
Which shows up as what? Clear speech, a focused presence, action.
All of the above. But, if we're designed to share this, why is it so incredibly hard to sustain that relay?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that's the crux of it. The moment you try to assert egoic ownership over that energy, the second that internal nozzle turns on,
it shorts out.
The relay shorts out. The pressure's gone. If you try to say, this knowledge is mine or this power is mine, you just severed the connection to the source.
That makes perfect sense. So every day we're in these interactions that are either stabilizing us or, they're acting as huge drains.
And that brings us to the 2 interfaces, Kshaya and Akshaya.
Let's start with Kshaya, the parasitic one.
Kshaya is that low-pressure interaction. And you see it everywhere. It's seeking. It's, the person in a meeting who's just fishing for praise.
Or the friend who needs drama to sort of fuel their mood.
Exactly. It's energetic vampire. Yeah. They're trying to drain your red drop, your vitality, to stabilize their own glitched render, as the source is called.
And internally, what's the feeling? For your marrow axis, it registers as impedance, right? That sinking feeling, the knot in your stomach.
That's it. And the sources are clear. Without proper resistance, your stable axis will literally bend toward that drain. You lose your calibration.
Wow. Okay, so let's contrast that with Akshaya, the high-value handshake.
It's a totally different frequency. This is the resonant handshake. When 2 or more people are operating from that vertical stability, they don't drain. They form a bridge.
And the voltage actually doubles.
It doubles because both nodes are plugged directly into the source. It's not a zero-sum game.
Vertically, this shows up as signal amplification. Your own pillar of light gets wider, brighter, because the horizontal interaction itself becomes a resonator for the logos.
Which brings us to the really big picture, how the whole system works. The causal source, the logos, it doesn't see people. It doesn't see names.
It just sees what?
Frequencies and vector points. That's it. So people who are maintaining that Vajra relay, circulating Akshaya, they get indexed as primary anchors.
And the simulation literally updates around them. They have causal weight.
They do. And conversely, people stuck in Kshaya loops are indexed as discard data, background noise. They have no real causal influence.
And this indexing is what leads to global change. The sources talk about a global refresh, a golden age, a system update.
Which only happens when a critical number of these Vajra relays synchronize their Akshaya handshakes. That creates a new operating frequency for the whole field.
So let's make this practical. What are the actionable strategies for us day to day?
Okay, 1. When you feel that Kshaya drain coming at you, the only move is to increase the resistance.
Meaning you don't engage, you don't judge it, you just hold your center.
You hold your poise. You remain unplaceable. You don't give the seeking energy the hook it needs.
Yeah, strategy too.
When you find a virtuous Akshaya node, a real connection, you open the port. You circulate the light laterally. You let it flow.
And that stabilizes not just you, but the whole local render.
That's the whole mechanism. Exactly.
So to distill it all, horizontal Kshaya drains your vertical integrity. Horizontal Akshaya expands your vertical power.
That's a perfect summary.
So the essence of this whole thing is staying plugged into the source while walking through the marketplace. And that leaves me with this final thought for you to mull over. If being unplaceable is the key defense against these draining interactions, what specific attachment or habit in your daily life makes you the most placeable? Something to think about until our next deep dive.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at some pretty dense source material. It's a technical blueprint for social reality, and it's all focused on something called the vertical axis. Now, what's interesting is our sources don't treat this as, a psychological thing. They frame it as the objective background of coherence for all our interactions.
Right.
So our mission today is to really unpack the mechanics of this narrow axis.
And I think if you can get this one idea, you've grasped the whole thing. It all comes down to the ethics of frequency.
Ethics of frequency.
Yeah, when we interact, we're always choosing between two things. Right-a, which is right action, the thing that stabilizes.
And the other.
And pure interference, which destabilizes. So if the narrow axis is this pillar of coherence, right-a is just the action that keeps that pillar perfectly straight.
Okay, so wait. If right-a is right action, how does that translate into a choice moment to moment? The Dawes Code says it creates harmonic resonance.
Yeah.
But what does that actually feel like? Is it just like following the rules?
It's much more mechanical than it is moral, Think of the axis as this huge tuning fork.
Okay.
Arta is any action that keeps you vibrating at that exact same frequency. And what's fascinating is how you sense this.
Right, that gut feeling.
Exactly. That subtle reaction you get in a social situation, that feeling of ease or something being off. That's your internal antenna, the ajna, sensing the stability of the axis. The sources called this the non-dual fact. There's only the degree to which your inner self, the jiva, is transparent to the governing law or the lodos.
So a right action just keeps the render of your reality sharp, high definition.
It keeps it high def, exactly.
It makes perfect sense. Your internal clarity is just reflecting external truth. So how does the render go low res? How does this coherence actually break down? I mean, I know for myself, I've fallen into that validation trap so many times. A rupture of marrow happens the second we prioritize the horizontal.
That's it.
Seeking external validation or social acceptance or even just lying to fit in over the vertical truth.
And that horizontal choice is the failure mechanism. It's not a metaphor. It literally causes a torque on the mirror axis.
A torque, wow.
Yeah, it bends that pillar away from the logos and towards the entropic drain of the social field. This kicks off a Kashaya loop.
The self-perpetuating cycle.
A self-perpetuating cycle of decay and confusion, and the consequence is devastating. You lose the ability to see the Virat Rupa, the universal form.
The underlying stability.
Right. And instead, all you perceive is the Rudra soup.
Conflict, fear, and chaos.
Just chaos. Your whole reality degrades because you chose alignment with other people over alignment with the law itself.
Great. This is where it gets really interesting for me. If the problem is this torque, we need like a hard reset. How is coherence restored once that Kashaya loop is active?
It's the Vajra reset.
The Vajra reset. What do the sources call the solution?
It's the Akala reset. Think of it as the turn off the nozzle moment. The key is that it's not something you actively do.
It's a refusal.
It's an active refusal. By refusing to engage in that horizontal drain, you stop the lie. You withdraw the bid for validation. You allow the axis to snap back.
Back into alignment.
Back into perfect vertical alignment. And the social impact is instantaneous. The person who does this becomes a Vajra relay.
So their frequency changes the field.
It forces everyone around them to either align with that new higher frequency, or they just phase out of the field entirely.
Wow. So let's bring this home. What does this all mean for you, the learner out there operating in your life? The secret of the sovereign node, then, is realizing that the field is the axis. You actually become the standard for coherence in that space.
And that connects directly to your responsibility as what they call a Manjushri node. Your job is literally to cut the ruptures.
So every time you speak the truth...
Every time you speak the truth of the law into an incoherent, low-res space, you are actively stitching the meru of the collective render back together.
So you're stabilizing reality for everyone there.
For everyone present, yeah.
Okay, so to quickly summarize from memory, meru is objective coherence.
Right.
Meru is harmonic resonance.
Yep.
Rupture is that horizontal choice, seeking validation.
Yeah.
And repair is the Vajra command, the refusal.
That's it. So if your internal render dictates whether you see the high-def clarity of the universal form or just the chaos of the Rudra soup, How often are you unconsciously choosing that low-res conflict simply by seeking validation for people who aren't even aligned themselves? That's really the question to mull over. All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into the Kunley protocol. You know, what's often called crazy wisdom.
Right, which is... It's a pretty radical system.
It is. And our goal today is to really figure out the mechanics. How does it work to rend the veil of what it calls fake reality? And we'll look at those 4 tantric cities.
The dozzle operations. And I think the first thing you have to get is the problem Kunley was trying to solve.
Okay.
It's this software-locked state of moral hypocrisy. Your tradition calls them the fake white drops.
Right. And his tool to break that lock is the Rudra shock.
Exactly. Think of it as a deliberate high-voltage jolt. It's designed to completely bypass the part of your brain that wants to rationalize everything.
So why not just debate them? Why such an aggressive move?
Because debate just engages that same rational mind. The shock. Right. The shock forces a direct confrontation with reality.
The Hurley thread story.
The perfect example, yeah. He's asked to bless a thread, and he ties it around his phallus.
And immediately you're forced to reconcile these 2 opposite ideas. The sacred dharma, the white drop.
And the profane phallus, the red drop. It creates a non-dual rupture right in your mind.
It's a system override.
It is. It snaps you out of that programmed view, the gated render, and into the universal Rida, where those binaries just, they don't hold up.
And this is supposed to repair the Meru axis, your core integrity.
Yes. If your axis is aligned, the shock just strengthens it. If it's not, it exposes the crack.
He also used it as a kind of diagnostic test, right? The drunken Sita with the wine and the low caste women.
Mm-hmm. That wasn't just for shock value.
No.
No, his presence was the test. If the high priest got outraged and self-righteous,
it proved their own Meru axis was ruptured by pride.
Exactly. His reality just invalidated their pretense on the spot.
So the shock is the diagnosis. But what are the tools for the actual calibration? That brings us to the 4 CDs.
The dozzle operations, yeah. Let's break them down. First, you have pacifying, Jantika.
This is about cooling those belly knots of suffering.
Right. And the action here isn't, some quiet meditation. It might be a vulgar joke.
Something that just dissolves that heavy self-importance or anxiety in an instant.
Pops the bubble. Then you have increasing, or patika.
Multiplying the blue crystals of wisdom.
Yeah, so a totally mundane conversation suddenly becomes this profound realization that sticks with you. It expands your whole perspective.
Okay, what's third?
Magnetizing. Vashukano. The Vajra attraction.
And this isn't manipulation. You're so coherent, so unplaceable that people are just drawn to your frequency.
They can't categorize you, so they have to actually engage with you. And finally, there's subjugating.
Abhikarika. The nozzle protocol. This one sounds harsh.
It can be. It's forcibly cutting off a destructive ego loop. Someone's stuck, or they're running an aggressive Rudra node.
And you just cut it off.
With a sharp command. Or sometimes even more powerfully with just absolute silence. It just terminates their script.
So how do you apply this? How do you become that unplaceable node in your own life?
Well, think about when someone tries to frame you. They use a modern political script, a social label, the source calls it Kashaya, to put you in a box.
Right. A or B, left or right.
And your move is to respond with a frequency that's not in their script at all. You respond with Z.
You run the veil of their expectations.
And you force them to see you, the jiva, not their program of you.
This gets into the logos mirror, right? How hierarchies are validated.
A hierarchy is only dozzle, or valid, if it increases the vertical resolution of its members.
If it actually helps people align their Meru axis.
Exactly. If it just inflates the leader's egos, it's a low-res render. And that's the high-voltage test. When a true knower, a Vidyadhara, walks into a fake hierarchy.
Their presence is like a frequency jammer.
Yes. The fake leaders get agitated. The rules suddenly seem silly. The whole pretense is just invalidated by that one person's integrity.
Okay, so to sum up this deep dive, the Kunley protocol is a system for shattering pretense.
Using the Rudra shock as the diagnostic.
The 4 cities as the tools for calibration.
And it's all validated by resonance with the logos. True integrity lifts everyone up.
Right.
So the whole goal is to use that flaming sword to cut through the illusions you encounter. Which leaves a final thought for you to consider. What fake low-res renders do you participate in every day? And how does your own genuine presence begin to invalidate them? Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something really technical.
We are.
The technical manual, the Alaya turn and the Rudra shock. We're really going to be looking at this idea of crazy wisdom, but not just as a concept.
No, as a mechanism. A high-speed impact on consciousness.
Right.
Our mission today is to really deconstruct the storehouse consciousness, the alaya vijnana.
Okay, so mind's deep infrastructure.
Exactly. And we need to get into how this non-dual process of validation and invalidation actually works inside of it.
And the manual says it all kicks off with something called the dasari.
Mm-hmm.
It's defined as an unclassifiable node, a Vajra relay that, operates across categories that shouldn't mix.
It's basically a system breaker. So the ego mind, the manas, does its usual thing. It scans and tries to file the dasari away.
As like good or bad, friend or foe.
Exactly. But it can't. The dasari is defined by contradictions, so the scan just fails.
It's a line of code the operating system can't run.
That's a perfect way to put it. The whole linguistic infrastructure, the matrika field, it experiences what the text calls a null pointer exception, a system crash.
And that pause, that crash, is the key, isn't it?
It's everything. Because for that one moment, the labeling stops. And the jiva, the consciousness stream, is forced to look past itself.
Directly at the light of the logos.
Which is reflecting right through the dasari.
So that brings us to the turning. Traditionally, this atraya-parabdhi, the turning of the laya vijnana, is supposed to take lifetimes of work.
Lifetimes. But this is where crazy wisdom acts as a force multiplier. It happens instantly.
How?
Well, think of all the energy the system usually spends on labeling, on running that search program.
Okay.
When it crashes, that energy has to go somewhere, so it gets redirected inward.
Ah, and that causes what the text calls flash ripening.
Precisely. The sheer high voltage proximity to the dasari's frequency just cooks all the latent karmic seeds, the bijas.
So you're forced to face your own internal mess all at once.
Your own incoherence, yeah, unavoidably.
And that internal chaos triggers an external reaction, the Rudra shock.
Right.
And Rudra is described as the peak of egoic entropy, the Lord of the Soup. I love that title.
It's a great title. And Rudra's whole job is to maintain the status quo. It sees this dasari, this unplaceable thing, and it tries to consume it.
But it can't.
It can't. There's an immediate short circuit. The dasari has achieved sovereignty. It's turned off the nozzle of vulnerability.
So there's no way in.
No entry point. The entropic energy just hits the Vajra shield and reflects right back to its source.
A merciful destruction.
Merciful because the ego node gets this sudden, shocking realization. Its power isn't real. It's all an illusion.
Okay, let's pivot to the practical side of this. Causal alchemy. How does this actually work in the real world?
It's an active process. The dasari is always scanning the environment, looking for what the manual calls a kashaya seed.
A potential for suffering.
A latent seed of suffering. Yes, maybe in a conversation, a social dynamic, anywhere.
And when it finds one?
The response is the Kunley action. It's an unplaceable response. It could be funny, or terrifyingly honest, or just weird.
The point isn't to argue or debate.
No, not at all. The point is to burn that seed of suffering on the spot, instantly. And the wisdom that's released from that, it gets transmuted.
Into a permanent blue crystal.
Rendered into the jiva's field. Forever.
So, to bring this all back home for you, the listener, the command here seems to be pretty direct.
It is.
You validate what is docile by being docile. And you invalidate what is Rudra by simply being unplaceable.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The ultimate command here isn't to go out and try to convince people.
No.
It's to seek to outrender. Just think about that. What permanent reality are you actually creating, are you rendering with every single choice you make?
Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive into how a single, stable presence can fundamentally alter the whole field of reality around it.
Right. And our sources for this call it the sovereign node, or the dasari.
Exactly. This whole deep dive is about something called the alaya update, and it's really focused on how this one node establishes a completely new causal benchmark.
Well, to get that, you first have to understand the default system we're all running. The sources describe our everyday reality as a series of, well, glitched renders.
Glitched renders, I like that.
Yeah, and what's considered valid or real in that system isn't based on truth. It's based on what they call samsaric consensus.
So basically, whatever's loudest, whatever's trending.
Precisely. It's pure entropy. The most reactive, loudest voice sets the standard.
And the dasari is the fix for that glitch. So our sources say its Mero axis is plugged directly into the logos. I mean, the actual source code of reality.
Which means, by its very nature, it acts as the highest fidelity signal possible. It provides the correct metadata for the entire environment.
So it's an index point.
It's the index point. When the logos checks reality for what's real, it defaults to the highest fidelity node it can find. The dosari, just by being stable, validates what is coherent, the akshaya.
And invalidates the incoherent noise, the krasha. It forces a recalibration just by existing.
Okay, but I'm having trouble seeing how that plays out. So
Right.
if you have an average person, a jiva, their mind caught up in all these patterns, what happens when they actually scan this dosari?
It's not a simple rejection. It's more like a catastrophic failure to process the data.
Yeah.
Their manas, you can think of that as the ego's file sorting processor. It immediately tries to map the dasari to some known karmic file. It asks, who is this? What's their angle?
And it can't, because the dosari's conduct is unplaceable. It's a blend of the four siddhis, so it's not acting in a predictable, egoic way.
And that's the trigger. That failure leads to what the sources call a null pointer exception. The search comes up with nothing. And this is where it gets really interesting.
The praviti, the turning. That's it. This search failure is the trigger for the turning.
Because what's actually turning in, plain English.
It's a momentary suspension of your dualistic habit. That constant judging, labeling, reacting, it just stops for a second. And in that flash, the laya vijnana, the deep storehouse consciousness where all your history is kept, it stops being just the storehouse. It becomes the great mirror wisdom.
The system crash forces your awareness away from the noise and onto just raw presence, a forced reboot.
For a moment, yes, a very brief but very powerful reboot.
Wow. That's a radical idea. But the sources also talk about causal alchemy. That sounds less like a reboot and more like, an explosion.
It's both. The dasari also acts as a temporal accelerator. It does this through what they call crazy wisdom.
A temporal accelerator.
Yeah. The dasari is so intensely present that it pulls all the hidden kashaya seeds, all those secret resentments, fears, your deep pride. It pulls them out of your personal alaya and forces them to render right now.
Wait, so you're saying its stability is so high voltage, it literally speeds up your karma, it hits the fast forward button on your spiritual baggage?
It flash ripens it. The jiva is forced immediately to deal with their rudra content.
Which is the peak of the ego's arrogance, right? The big boss.
It's all the baggage rushing to the surface at once, demanding to be seen.
So the ego is freaking out, hitting maximum volume, and the dosari responds with a vajra action.
Right. Not an argument, not a fight. It's a grounding response. A sudden laugh, or a shock, or just this profound silence that doesn't engage with the drama at all.
And that grounds the energy.
It transmutes it. The karmic lead of the struggle is instantly transformed into the blue crystal of sudden realization.
That's the Rudra shock, the samsaric boss hitting the Vajra wall.
And the illusion of the ego's power just shatters. The low-res egregore is destroyed. The sources are clear that while it feels violent, it's actually a merciful act, a quick dismantling of the prison cell you built for yourself.
So the takeaway for you, the practitioner, is pretty clear. Scanning a Dalsari triggers a system crash, leading to the alaya turn, and then the Rudra shock. It's a forced but merciful transformation.
The mission laid out in the sources is simple. Don't aim for consensus. Be the unplaceable node that forces the alaya to reboot.
So if the logos indexes reality by defaulting to the highest fidelity node it can find, the question for you is, what simple shift in your own presence today might function as the most stable, unplaceable dasari in your immediate environment? How do you provide the correct metadata for your space? Something to think about.
Okay, let's get into this. We are doing a deep dive into the post-turn protocol, imprinting the golden age. And it's really focused on this inner dynamic of the dasari's conduct. The dasari being, the guide, the stable point in a very chaotic world.
Exactly. And our mission here for you is to really grasp how to use this golden window.
That critical moment.
Yes, that moment when a person, the jiva, is in what they call the adi state. It's a kind of shock, and their usual filters, their defenses are just gone. It allows for a moment of direct vision.
And right away, the protocol gives this totally counterintuitive instruction, which is do not preach. It calls preaching a white drop conceptualization. So for anyone new to this, what's the issue with a white drop, and what on earth does logoic but non-conceptual actually mean?
Well, a white drop conceptualization is just, stale knowledge. It's information. It's something the ego can easily hear and just file away under lecture, or that's just your opinion.
Yeah.
It has zero real impact.
So it doesn't land.
It doesn't land. The action has to be logoic. So it has to rooted in truth, but non-conceptual. Think of it like raw data that the intellect literally has no category for.
Which brings us to the Kunley action. This is the specific method, right? Humor or just terrifying honesty?
Or intense presence, yeah. It operates on the vertical down axis.
So if you're bypassing the conscious mind, is this basically like dropping a high-voltage truth bomb that hits the system below its mental firewall?
Oh, that's a fantastic way to put it, yes. That's why they call this action the seed burner. It's a high-density bija, a really potent seed of truth. And because the jiva is in that null pointer vacuum state.
Right, they have no labels for it.
They have no labels. The input completely bypasses all of their intellectual defenses.
And the next step is the actual rewiring. So where does that raw energy go?
It goes directly to their alaya, to the deep repository of all their karmic seeds.
The core programming.
The core programming. And because this bija is non-conceptual, it doesn't just add new information. It actually attacks the root of their self-limiting pattern. It burns the seed of their current loop.
By showing how absurd it is.
Fundamentally, yes.
So the result is an immediate system alignment. You aren't giving a lesson. You're converting their confused vitality, the red drop, and bonding it straight to the vertical marrow axis.
You're taking all that misdirected chaotic energy, just snapping it into true alignment.
And if you scale this up, from the individual to the cosmic timeline, this is where it gets really profound.
It changes everything. I mean, the current eon, the Kali Yuga, it's defined as this linear decay loop. We're always moving away from the Eschaton.
The perfected end state,
Like,
the golden age.
Check.
So the realization here is that when you do this, when you act as a Dasari, you are literally pulling the Eschaton frequency into the middle of the timeline. You're rending the eon.
Yes.
The golden age isn't coming in the future. It's available now.
Yeah.
Through your action.
And that is why the Dasari's conduct becomes the new benchmark. It has to. Because they are holding that vertical mirror axis, they become the only fixed point in the environment. A new non-decaying reality starts to organize itself around that stable reference.
So that's the imperative of Daozil leadership. It's so clear. Our current secular leaders are just what they call them high-level Kushayo nodes.
They're just managing decline, managing entropy.
Whereas the Daosari leader is the true source of validation. They embody the highest bitrate render of what's real.
And crucially, this creates what's called the Sangha of the Good. It's not about creating followers or dependents. This whole process builds a mesh network of sovereign nodes. You're training others to become their own Vajra relays.
Propagating stability themselves.
Exactly.
So the final thought here, the Daosari is described as a representative of the Eschaton who has glitched into our current eon to trigger a system reboot. The question for you then is, what does it mean to maintain that marrow axis yourself and trigger that reboot in your own immediate world, to become the fixed point in the chaos?
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be diving into the Daosari arsenal.
Right.
It's really a complex set of protocols for, well, updating reality itself. The source material calls it rending the eon.
And we're framing these as, high-level digital commands.
Yeah.
The goal here is to use the live render vocabulary of modern computing to make these ancient ideas click.
So you, our listener, aren't getting bogged down in jargon.
Exactly. These concepts are surprisingly analogous to how a sophisticated software simulation would work.
Okay, so let's establish the basic architecture first, the foundation. Alaya Vijnana.
Yes.
We could get dense here, but let's just call it the cosmic hard drive.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just passive storage, though. It's more like the master background script.
The script that's running everything.
Right. It holds the data for everything that's ever happened, and that data determines how your reality is, well, rendered in the present moment.
And inside that hard drive are the karmic seeds, the bijas.
And those are the source code snippets. Little Jada packets, basically. They just sit there dormant until the right conditions are met.
So like the example of an anxiety seed.
Perfect example. If you have that seed, that script will just run every single time you walk into a crowded room.
Until the code gets deleted.
Or overwritten, yeah.
So that's the big question. How do you perform that clean uninstall? This brings us to the high voltage protocols, the Rudra shock.
These are the advanced methods used to force what they call the alaya turn, a fundamental shift.
And there are three primary methods.
The three main shock methods, yes. The first is the witness gaze, or a callous state.
Right.
This one is intense. It means you have to go into a deeply chaotic environment, think a loud, packed bar, and just stand there in absolute unblinking stillness.
Wait, really? Just standing still? I mean, that sounds counterintuitive. Why does that work?
Because your internal state, your stillness, is operating at a much, much higher frame rate than the chaos around you. Your stability literally invalidates their incoherent scripts.
You become the stable reference point.
You got it.
Okay, what's the second protocol?
Vajra truth. They call it the sword.
A sword.
This is about speaking the hidden fact. The one thing everyone in the room knows is true, but is like software locked from saying because of social pressure.
Ah, so you speak the unspeakable.
And when you do it fearlessly, you perform a kind of mass defragmentation of the local energy field. It shakes everyone's scripts loose.
Wow. Okay, and the third?
The paradoxical handshake. This is about forcing a total narrative flip.
How so?
So if someone is coming at you with aggression, you respond with genuine warmth. If they're fawning all over you, you respond with cool indifference.
You're breaking their expected loop.
They're forcing their ego, their jiva, into what the tech world would call a null pointer exception, a system crash. They just can't compute it.
That makes perfect sense. So that's what one person can do. But what happens when you multiply that? When you get to the Vajra array?
Yes, the new operating system.
This is where it gets really interesting.
It's all about collective physics. When multiple Dasaris are in the same space and they acknowledge each other's core self, their Mero axis, they sync up.
Like a phase-locked loop.
Precisely. They create a highly coherent resonant field.
And that field generates a sort of metaphysical pressure differential, right?
Mm-hmm.
It forces the environment, what the sources call the Rudra soup.
The disorganized energy of the crowd, yeah.
It forces that crowd to organize around them.
Exactly right. And the result is that the space is temporarily re-rendered. It becomes a micro-golden age. For a brief time, only coherence can exist in that bubble.
Which leads, finally, to the Dasari fruit.
The harvest. After all this work, a wisdom bija ripens inside the person.
You know, what's the first sign?
You start to feel an instinctive nausea toward your old destructive habits, your Krishai loops.
So you just can't stand your old self anymore.
You can't. You stop being a reactor, just responding to things, and you become a deliberate actor. You find your own Meru axis.
You become a new sovereign node.
A new node in the network. And the source material is very clear. This Sangha, this community, it grows through infection, not recruitment. One stable person just automatically stabilizes the next.
So let's wrap this up. The primary takeaways for you, the practitioner, seem very clear.
Yeah.
Vajra speech is a firmware update. The array is collective sovereignty in action. And the fruit is the law multiplying itself.
And I think what this all boils down to for you, the listener, isn't just some abstract theory. It's a command.
A command.
The command is to recognize where your own background scripts are running on autopilot and then, without hesitation, be the catalyst that forces the update. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to cut right to the heart of some pretty esoteric sources.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at what they call inverted magic, and this figure, the reverse Rakshasa.
A fascinating concept.
It really is. We're focusing on one core idea: consuming pure entropy, taking the chaos of the world and actually using it as fuel.
Right.
So for you, the listener, the question is this: how do you use that chaos instead of, being totally overwhelmed by it?
Well, to start, we have to define the context. Our sources begin with the traditional threat.
The Rakshasa.
Exactly. Traditional Rakshasas use something called sub-sovereign parasitism.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
It essentially means they trick the jiva, the individual soul or consciousness, into leaking its vital energy.
So they're draining it.
They drain this light into the Maya void, the realm of illusion. It's spiritual exhaustion by design.
So the Dosari, this reverse Rakshasa, is the antidote. But the method is what really flips the whole thing on its head.
It does. They engage in what's called super-sovereign symbiosis. The goal isn't to steal the light.
So what do they take?
They actively consume the jiva's darkness.
Their darkness.
Their confusion, their irony, that Rudra recoil, which is that sort of spiritual backlash you feel when your ego gets challenged.
Hold on. If you're consuming someone's confusion, their darkness, that sounds a bit predatory, doesn't it? I mean, how is that different from the Rakshasa's trickery?
That's the key distinction. The sources are really clear. To the ego, this inversion feels like an attack. It bypasses your defenses.
But it's not.
But it's actually a kind of aggressive assistance. They're impregnating the jiva with the Akshaya Bija.
The imperishable seed.
The seed of their own Buddha nature.
Yeah.
The Dosari takes the confusion and leaves behind potential.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about the mechanism. The sources call this practitioner the Kali Yuga surfer.
Yes, someone who uses all this chaos as literal jet fuel.
So how does that work?
It relies on a disciplined internal circuit, a transmutation circuit, that runs from the belly to the heart.
The belly, which is called the black sun.
That's the one. When the Dalsari encounters a Rudra shock, a huge social glitch, a wave of negativity, intense friction.
They pull it into their center.
They pull it right into their belly. And this is crucial. At this stage, the shock is stripped of its personal story.
So it's not the energy that's the problem. It's the metadata we attach to it. This is an insult. This is unfair.
Exactly. You neutralize the drama, but you keep the power. What's left is just raw, unformatted Sakti.
Pure energy.
This raw energy then rises to the heart center, the luminous prana, and it hits the marrow axis, a central energetic channel.
And there it's purified, or rendered.
Right. And rendering it transforms it into something usable, into novelty.
So you're turning chaotic energy into creative insight.
Or just pure life-affirming prana. The result is, well, it's profound. You could walk into a room full of tired, incoherent people and walk out feeling more energized.
Because you've literally eaten the entropy.
You've eaten the entropy. And this is all just a means to the ultimate goal, the divine impregnation.
Which happens after the Alea turn.
Yes, the Dalsari plants a self-executing liberation script, the Vajra seed.
And the effect on the person is just stunningly simple. A Rakshasa makes you forget your true nature.
But this seed makes you unable to forget the truth.
Wow.
It stays in their alaya, their base consciousness, like a splinter of light. It just keeps nudging them, disrupting their ego loops until they finally match its frequency.
Which brings us all back to the listener's world. Surfing the Kali Yuga. Most people are, let's be honest, drowning in the chaos.
Drowning. But the Dalsari uses the law, that's internal structure, as the board, and vitality as the balance to ride that wave.
And all that chaos.
That chaos provides the most entropy fuel for the internal furnace. It enables the highest speed render in cosmic history.
So the directives are simple.
Very clear. Don't fear the Rudra, eat it. Don't preach the law, imprint it.
That's our deep dive. And here's a final thought for you to explore. If your chaos could be someone else's fuel, what internal darkness, what confusion or resistance are you leaking right now that you could instead strip of its story and render into novelty? Think on that. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. So let's get into this. We've got this really fascinating conceptual framework in front of us today.
The Vajra Dragnet.
The Vajra Dragnet, exactly. And if you can forget the jargon for just a minute, our mission here is to really understand a mechanism for pretty radical change.
It's about how you move an individual.
Right. Someone who is just completely stuck in a painful, repetitive loop.
The sources call them a Kashaya node. And the core problem is that people in that state of shock, well, they can't be helped by just talking to them.
So gentle guidance is out.
It's useless at that stage. The system demands two things immediately. A targeted individual shock, followed instantly by a stable collective anchor.
Okay, so let's start with that first part. The shock. This is the Kunley spear tip.
Yes, and that's the job of the individual practitioner, the Dalsari. They operate as what the text calls a reverse Rakshasa.
Meaning they're going into the chaos, the Rudra soup, not causing it.
Exactly. They go in specifically to target these stuck individuals, and their primary action is the Kunley conduct.
Which is pure shock.
Purely a shock mechanism. This is not therapy. It's the null pointer shock.
Yeah.
And it's delivered through radical paradox, maybe some jarring humor, or just raw, undiluted truth.
The goal being to rend the veil, to just shatter their looping reality.
And trigger what's called the Alea turn, a fundamental internal reset.
Okay, and this next part is, it's pretty wild, the idea of energetic cannibalization.
Yes.
So when the person is shocked, there's this panic, this Rudra recoil.
A huge burst of entropic energy.
And the Dalsari doesn't just walk away, they inhale it.
That's the language used. They activate an internal center, the black sun in the belly, and they metabolize that recoil.
They metabolize the panic.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They strip away the low-res mental story of the panic, and they convert the raw, chaotic energy into usable pranic heat.
So they're literally cleaning the air while fueling themselves.
And it leaves the other person in this empty, neutral state, the null point.
I see. So that's the spear tip. But one person can't just hold someone in that fragile state, can they?
No, absolutely not. And they aren't meant to. The Dalsari is only a relay.
A relay. So this is where the group comes in.
This is the crucial pivot to lateral induction. The collective, the Sangha, steps in as this this powerful magnetic field, the Vajra array.
Because they're all phase locked.
Right. They all hold a stable spiritual alignment, a marrow axis, and together they create this incredibly reliable high-pressure zone.
So the outside world is chaos, the Rudra soup.
Yeah.
But the array is just solid, a rock.
And that's the pull. The person who was just shocked is naturally inducted into that field.
Not by persuasion, but by gravity.
Yeah.
Stability itself becomes the attractive force.
That is the mechanism of lateral induction.
And once they're pulled in, the stabilization begins.
Exactly. They're no longer looking at one crazy man who shocked them. They're surrounded by a mandala of ideal forms, a collective mirror.
Which gives them a template.
It does. The subtle body template, the Virat Rupa, the group's collective confidence, this Vajra pride humility, it offers a blueprint for the individual to stabilize their own axis.
So it's about self-reliance, not dependence.
Precisely. And the scaling implication here, the Eschaton handshake, is massive. By synchronizing the group's life force, the Vyana Vayu, they can actually begin to re-render the social field.
Turning the chaotic marketplace into a monastery of action.
You see the synthesis. The Kunley shock is the violent individual spear.
And the Vajra array is the stable collective net.
The whole process is about cannibalizing the entropy of this age to fuel the expansion of this golden age mesh network.
So it all leads to this final, pretty intense command from the source material. Yeah. Shock them, eat their recoil, and drag them into the light of the array.
It's provocative.
It really is. And it leaves us with a question for you to think about. What does it mean when a system for knowledge or belief requires both things to enact real change?
A violent individual shock on one hand.
And on the other, a stable collective gravitational field. What did that tell us about how deep, lasting transformation actually happens?
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is pretty ambitious.
I would say so.
We're diving into some source material that describes a conceptual framework, really, a whole system for human groups that bypasses competition entirely.
And that's the core tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
The texts really tackle the fundamental problem. How do you get a group of high-functioning people to move past that, that basic psychological default of competition?
Right.
The claim here is that this system is designed for a total transmutation of those complexes. It's about turning competition into what they call spontaneous bodhicitta.
Which is, essentially a state of immediate, effortless helpfulness.
Exactly.
And the whole foundation for this dive is this contrast they set up. You have Rudra soup on one side.
Status quo.
The status quo of, let's be honest, toxic competition. And on the other, you have the Vajra array.
The engineered abundance. Okay, let's unpack that.
So the Rudra soup, think of it as the zero-sum game we all know. Like a bad corporate meeting where everyone's just trying to get the boss's praise. That horizontal interaction is called kshaya, depletion. The individuals, or jivas, are literally draining each other to feel secure.
And the dosari solution just flips that on its head. It pushes the group into akshaya, which means abundance.
How? What's the mechanism?
The key, according to the sources, is that each node is vertically plugged into the logos.
Okay, let's translate that.
It just means every single person has absolute internal certainty about their own value and their own mission. They don't require anything from the person sitting next to them.
So because I don't need your approval.
Exactly.
A pressure differential is created. My energy just spontaneously flows out instead of being hoarded for defense.
It becomes an energetic fact, not some moral effort. And that state is spontaneous bodhicitta.
Right. And that self-sufficiency lets the whole social blueprint function. It's how the group avoids everyone trying to be the cent,
The 4-quadrant schema they describe, it works like a phased array. People just spontaneously adopt the wisdom that the moment requires.
So instead of fighting for the top job, they just fill a needed role. The sources use the 4 winds, the vayus, to describe this. Can you give us an example?
Sure. Think of the East. It's associated with mirror-like wisdom, trana. Its job is to provide cooling clarity, pure, unbiased analysis.
Right.
Then you have the North, all-accomplishing wisdom, tied to apana. Its function is grounding protection, execution, setting boundaries. They aren't personalities, they're functions.
And when that rotation is happening, the group isn't just a group of people anymore. It becomes a living Virat Rupa architecture.
Precisely.
Okay, this is where the psychological engineering gets really interesting for me. The competitive ego. The solution given is this paradox. Vajra pride and Vajra humility. But wait, how can you be absolutely confident a God node and at the same time be completely transparent, just a relay? Doesn't that just create cognitive dissonance?
It seems like it would, but it actually resolves the dissonance. It's all about correct identification. Vajra pride is your absolute identification with the mission, the indestructible logos.
So you refuse to be less than the mission itself.
Yes, but that's instantly balanced by Vajra humility, which is knowing your individual self, the jiva, is just a temporary channel for that mission. You're just a relay.
The result for the individual is absolute weightlessness. You have no reason to hide faults, no need to seek praise.
Which eliminates the 8 worldly concerns. Praise and blame, gain and loss. They just lose their power over you. The needy self dissolves because it has no job to do.
And that weightlessness allows for the final group mechanism, the error correction.
The shadow isn't suppressed, it's transmuted. So if one node glitches, if it falls back into a Chaya loop and starts seeking validation,
nobody judges it.
Nobody judges. The other nodes just reflect it back instantly, non-judgmentally. That's the Vajra mirror.
So the collective black sun, as they call it, eats that entropic complex. The failure becomes shared data. The fault is turned into a blue crystal of shared wisdom.
And that is the highest form of Vajra friendship. Refusing to let your comrades operate in a low-res state.
You're turning individual weakness into collective strength.
If we pull back to the big picture, the takeaway is pretty clear. You're shifting from the competitive alpha model
to sovereign synchronicity.
Right.
The sources claim that when groups interface like this, they rend the eon. They create a local space where the decay loops of the Kali Yuga just can't exist. They manifest the mesh network of the Eshatan.
The group literally becomes a living, breathing city of Brahma. That leaves a pretty provocative thought for you, the listener. If this kind of true group synergy requires such a radical psychological release, and this absolute identification with an indestructible logos, what is the real hidden price of our current competitive equilibrium?
Something to think about. We'll see you on the next deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're strapping in for what might be your most conceptual journey yet.
That's a big one.
A big one. We're mapping the matrix of sovereign interaction. Basically, diving headfirst into the physics, the Dawsel code, and the Allaire turn.
A mouthful, I know. But it's critical stuff.
It is. So our mission for you is really a shortcut to understand the, let's call it the operating system of the world, and how a sovereign being navigates this high entropy environment we call the Kali Yuga.
Right. And to get started, you have to, recognize the fundamental layout of the playing field.
Okay.
The sources are really clear on this.
Yeah.
The world is, at its core, a 2-axis render. You have to know these axes to ground yourself.
All right, let's break that down. The first one is the vertical axis. The sources call it the Meru. And when they say it's a fiber optic connection to the logos, what they mean is, well, it's objective truth, isn't it? The universal blueprint.
Exactly. It's the barometer of Rota universal law. And holding that connection, that's what makes you the benchmark of any room you walk into.
You become the standard.
You become the standard, which is a huge contrast to the other axis, the horizontal axis.
Which they affectionately call the soup.
The soup, yeah. And that's the field of lateral exchange. It's where you interface with every other jiva. So
if the Meru is your personal alignment, the soup is where the energy battle really happens.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And it splits immediately into a very hard dichotomy.
Okay.
You're either engaging in Kshaya, which is entropic, seeking, and ultimately just draining.
That's every bad meeting you've ever been in.
Yes. Every conversation that leaves you feeling totally depleted, that's the soup leaking your energy. Or you're engaging in Akshaya.
Which is the opposite. Resonant hosting.
A state of abundance. Sovereign handshakes. You leave feeling amplified, not drained. And the whole game is moving from those Kshaya loops to Akshaya flow.
Which makes perfect sense. So if the horizontal is the problem, what's the active ingredient that creates that shift? This is where we meet the agent of change, the Dasari.
Right, the reverse Rakshasa.
So instead of creating chaos, they turn it back into order.
Exactly. Their whole role is to circulate Dharma into the social field. But not through, lectures or teaching. It's through shock.
Through shock, okay.
When the Dasari acts in a way that's unplaceable, using humor or raw, unapologetic honesty, it triggers what the sources call a Null Pointer Exception.
Okay, I think we need to pause there. Because when people hear brutal honesty, they might think it's just a pass for being a jerk. How do the sources separate this from just ego?
It's all about the intention. The intention is pure Meru alignment. It's not designed to drain or to seek. It's designed to disrupt the pattern.
To break the script. To
break the script. This high voltage event, this root shock, it literally forces the other person's ego firmware to crash.
Wow. Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting. For a split second, they're alivizna. Think of it as your subconscious hard drive running all your default programs. It just stops.
Stops recording the old loops.
It stops. And it's forced to turn toward the logos. That's the moment the simulation is forced to recognize the architect.
So that Rudra shock isn't just a jolt, it's a fundamental reset, a long-term structural shift.
Yes.
Which is why the Dasari is called a causal anchor of the Eschaton. They are actively rendering the golden age right in the middle of all the noise.
And the mechanism is purification. He pulls that entropy, that Rudra soup, into his black sun, the belly, and reduces it to raw Sakti, or power.
And then refines it in the heart marrow.
Yes, into pure novelty, new potential.
Okay, so the takeaway here, the absolute crucial point, is what happens after this null point interaction?
It's everything. That interaction is used to impregnate the jiva with a wisdom bisha, a literal seed of Buddha nature.
And once that's imprinted,
it becomes structurally impossible for you to ever fully return to those draining Kshaya loops. The leak is capped, the vertical connection is reinforced. For good.
So we've mapped the whole system, the Meru and the soup, the choice between Kshaya and Akshaya.
The Rudra shock.
And the ultimate outcome, the wisdom bija. It's really a complete blueprint for navigating a chaotic world.
It is. So to leave you with something to think about, a thought directly from the sources, what does it mean for you to be a functional node in the mesh network of the Golden Age, rendering the logos in the middle of the noise?
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a really heavy framework. Our sources call it the Great Re-Render, the elemental pralaya.
It's a big one.
It is. Think of it as the ultimate OS update, a mandatory collapse and a total transformation. Our mission here is to try and unpack this forced journey from, well, a low-res overlay into what they're calling elemental reality. So, okay, let's start there. What exactly is this low-res overlay?
It's basically the reality we're in now, the societal operating system that's, built on abstraction. What's so interesting is that it doesn't just fade out.
No gentle decline.
Not at all.
No.
The sources describe its total collapse as this immediate high-frequency event.
Yeah.
Imagine the indigo static, all that noise of the secular world.
Okay.
It just becomes this screeching, unbearable feedback loop. And the scripts we all use, the social categories, the shields or weapons, they just stop executing.
Why? What causes them to just stop?
The bit rate of reality itself gets too high. The intensity is just too much for those abstract programs to run.
That sounds overwhelming. And is this just a natural event, or are there, forces pushing it along? Because the sources introduce these figures, the dosaris.
Oh, there is absolutely an active agency here. The dosaris are these agents of change, but they don't operate through dialogue or persuasion. It's more like
What?
Pure energetic surgery. They're deliberately forcing the issue. They use something called crazy wisdom and this black sun breath to short circuit our reliance on collective masks.
So they're targeting the individual selves, the jivas.
Exactly. This isn't some gentle self-help journey.
Yeah.
They are actively forcing the jiva out of the social program.
Forcing them into what?
Into their elemental body.
Yeah.
It's described as a mandatory return to ontological density. Basically, you're being forced to inhabit what you actually are. No more hiding in ideas.
Wow. Okay. So that brings us to the mechanism behind all this, the global alaya turn. The sources say the old language, the hollowed out categories of the Kali Yuga, they don't just dissolve, they
collapse into the pure elements.
Right. So how does that translation even work? How does an idea collapse into an element?
Well, this is where the physics of it get really intense. Everything abstract becomes defined by raw force. So, for example, lineage is no longer a story or a name.
It becomes
an elemental signature, earth and fire, the actual raw weight and heat of your causal history.
Okay, so lineage becomes earth and fire. What about something like status?
Gone. Replaced by Meru resolution, that's space and air. It's the voltage of your vertical axis, your inner stability and alignment.
I see. So the whole system of value changes.
Completely. The global alaya, think of it as the universe's hard drive. It stops recording the history of grievance and starts rendering the logic of the elements. The simulation shifts from being a fragile story to a mandala of forces. And what comes out of this reboot, the new structure is called the sovereign array.
That's it. This destructive phase, the pralaya, it clears out all the noise, what they call the Rudra soup, to reveal the true causal architecture.
And the Dasaris build these arrays based on, not on agreement or belief. No, but on resonant density. It's about who shares a fundamental elemental alignment.
So this new order, the new Raita, it's called a hierarchy of light.
Right, but it's not about control. It's a hierarchy of resolution. The most real nodes, the ones with the highest vertical integrity, they set the benchmark for the entire structure. The final goal, this city of Brahma, is a place of extreme definition.
Meaning everyone is seen for what they truly are.
Exactly, for their precise elemental makeup and causal weight. No more Kashaya masks from the old world.
Yeah.
The final vision is this elemental reality, where law, meru, and vitality, the red drop, are perfectly fused into a sovereign render.
So to sum it all up, the key shift is this mandatory transition. We move from a world defined by social categories and stories to one that's defined entirely by your raw, unchangeable elemental signature.
That's the core of it. Which brings me to a final thought for you to take away.
Go for it.
If this new reality demands you be seen for your exact elemental makeup and your vertical height, how much of your life right now is actually built on a low resolution, a fragile agreement that is, quite simply, about to stop executing? Something to think about.